Hello everyone, here I am once again, working on another really big project. It's quite involved. We've got a concrete crew, we've got siding going in after this deck is built, and this is once again a handicap accessible ramp. It's going to be a curved ramp that's built custom to this situation, and I'm really excited to get it started. What's up?
What's going on, man?
So here we are, we've got everything all formed out and set up for the concrete. We've got gravel laid in here, it's gonna get compacted. And this area all through here is where my main deck is gonna be. And I've pre-dug all of my footing holes, and those are gonna get poured monolithically with this slab that's going under here. And they're doing a slab here because they've had some drainage issues in the garage. So this is definitely far and wide a really good choice. And right out through here, this is where the ramp is going to start from the front edge of the deck. And it's going to follow a similar curve to the concrete, but come out a little bit further. Right out here into the yard. It's going to be 5 feet wide, and it's going to come in square with that form right there and flush right onto the concrete. It's going to be a really beautiful setup here. So these clients are remodeling their whole house. It's a single-story house with a basement, but they're making the whole house accessible. So there's a flush entry shower in the master bathroom. Both of these doors that they're putting in, they're on the same exact level. It's all going to be flush entry, so this is just like a temporary slider in here. And so what I've done so far is come in and put in my underlayment waterproofing that's going to go under my ledger board, which is actually quite a bit of ledger that we're going to run through this whole area. So that's all set up, and it was quite easy because they're re-siding the house as well, so I was able to just pull up much further than I needed and get that whole piece off of there. And this is an ideal scenario because the siding people can come. I'll have my Z flashing above my ledger board, and then they're going to be able to overlap their house wrap on that. So before the concrete pour happens, I've probably got enough time to get all my ledger boards set. So I'm going to start right here. This is the most important point because this is where we're going to have our main flush entry door. So I'm going to set this first and run everything level off of that. So you can see we've got all of our connections to the house made, and not all of these are truly ledger boards. It's just the pieces here, which you can see are lag bolted, 16 on center. All of these faces are technically actual ledger boards. The rest of this could just be considered a joist that's attached to the house. So those are ready to go. I'll put my Z flashing on there and tape over, but right now we are about to start pouring concrete. Alright, so it's Monday morning and the concrete is done. It's been curing all weekend. And here's how it turned out. It looks really nice. So this is the area that I get to work in, and this is pretty unusual that I get to build a deck on a nice clean surface. And here's how the front driveway turned out. Looks really nice. The concrete guys did a super good job. They had to cut out the old concrete, you can see that there, and lower this and create a new step, and all of that turned out really good. Okay, so I just finished kind of the rough framing. There's quite a bit of stuff to do and clean up before I move on, but I got my angle cut in there. So the stairway is going to come off of there, and then the ramp is going to approach this flat face. Good morning, everyone. It is the second day of actually building this deck. I got a lot done on the first day of framing. So now what I have to do is a bunch of detail work. I've got to put in quite a few places for nailers. I've got to take my planer and level out all of the unevenness in the deck and finish doing some blocking, and then I'm going to waterproof coat all the top edges of the framing so that this deck lasts forever. So here's some of that blocking. We've got parts where it's a little high, and that is just because there's a variety in the width of your wood all the time. As well with the flashing, the Z flashing up against the wall across the ledger. I came in and painted that. I wasn't able to find the brown flashing. Flashing very hard to come by right now, so I had some white flashing and I just painted that up, and that's gonna have a lot better finish. Alright, so now that I've planed everything down and gotten it really flush, I have opened up some of the treatment on the wood because I had to plane into some of the wider boards. What I'm going to go do is seal up the top edge of all the framing. And you pretty much have to brush this stuff on. It's really thick. But this is going to make this wood last so much longer because this is the side that's going to have standing water on it at times. And this is the side we're going to be screwing into, so this kind of seals all of that up. So I've got my asphalt coating on all of the framing, so I am ready to start decking. So you can see how I've met right up at the corner there. That's going to be a very nice finish, which I started anticipating about halfway through here, and it just happened to work out perfectly. So I got this set down, and the approach here is just using 3 or 4 screws and straightening these boards. You can tell they're still not perfect, and so in between those screws where I've got it correct, I still have to tweak all of these. My friends, the sun has just risen. It's 6 a.m. and I'm out here really early trying to get a start because it's been really hot. It's been like 96 to 98 the last 3 days and getting sunburned. But I'm ready to probably lay the rest of the decking on the main surface of the deck today and finish the railing system. So let's get to it. So let me show you something a little bit unique here. The way that this post came in and where my framing was, this is an odd little situation right here. I need a face here to get my 2x2s on, and then I needed a face here obviously in plane with that post. So I had to do a long 45 rip on there. These are the type of things that you can try to plan for, but really until you get into these situations, it's hard to know exactly what you're gonna do. But I don't look at these things as problems, I just look at them as future solutions. So I've got a couple of cut ends here, and I'm going to show you kind of what goes into every single cut that I'm making on this deck. It's a little bit involved, so the first thing I got to do is come in and sand this thing. And what I like to roll with is just by feel. I'm trying to hit every single piece the same exact way every time. And so, of course, it's not perfect, but I like that look. It's very human. There's an element of, I guess, the way that I work in this deck in every little piece of it, and that's the kind of thing that I really enjoy with building. So the next thing that I have to do is seal these butt ends, and I use this. It's called Ipe seal, and that is only on the end grain. So any cut that you're making where you're exposing the end grain here, this wood has a tendency to split over time, especially on the end grain, so I just take a little bit of that. I've used a brush before, just found that that's actually more messy than coming in here with my finger and doing that. And that's kind of all you need, and that'll soak in. And we are oiling this wood, but that oil's not going to penetrate through these butt ends very well, so you want to seal all these ends while you're cutting. So I've gone around just now and marked out all of my screw lines, so I'm going to be pre-drilling and screwing a ton of screws in this section. So I've pre-drilled a little line here and got some screws set up. These are stainless steel, 3-inch, number 7 star bit, and they have a trim head on them. And you have to use stainless steel when you're using this type of decking because it lasts so long. There isn't a normal deck screw out there that will outlast this deck. So this is another expense that kind of goes into this type of deck. I use this. It's a smart bit. This is the only type of bit that I've found that will countersink this wood because this wood is so hard. I've gotten some name brand like DeWalt or Milwaukee countersink bits and had them break literally on the first screw. Alright, so I just finished out this stairway, and I've gotten into quite a bit of the fascia. You'll notice that through this section here, that's where our ramp's going to come up. I'm not doing fascia there because we're still building out off of this. Another detail is how I laid out the decking. I laid it out so that we came up flush to the edge here, which we did. That worked out really nice, and that's so that this can continue with full pieces onto the ramp. And where we don't have the ramp, of course, I've got my reveal here and my border piece, so I did have to have a strip here, but that is much, much better than not thinking about it and having a strip here where you have continuous decking onto the ramp. So that worked out really nice. So the deck has been completely screwed down, and that's pre-drilling and marking all these lines. And you can see that it causes a little bit of disruption. So what I want to do is go around and sand the whole deck and open up the surface, get rid of these lines, which I put on very lightly, and then we're going to put some oil on here. Alright, so it's now time for my inaugural favorite part of a hardwood deck, which is getting the oil on it. This is Ipe oil, which is a penetrating oil stain. It's got some UV inhibitors and things like that in it. And it also just saturates the wood. Look at that. Look at that. Looking beautiful. So I do like to use a roller a little bit on a bigger deck like this. Just helps you get it on quicker. But I always come back and brush it. So here's the first look at this thing all oiled. It's quite a stark difference. and I'll go back and touch up some areas. Some of these boards are a little different. They're gonna soak up the oil a little more, so I always try to add some in those spots. All right, we got buddy Alex here, just making me some carne asada tacos. Look at all this. He's just going all out. Can you can you show me that flipper again?
Oh yeah.
So this is what we call the contractor spatula.
6-inch drywall knife.
Yeah.
Nice and sharp.
How's it work?
Actually, quite nice.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, there we go.
Look, nice and sharp edges, and grab that, flip it again.
Heck yeah.
What, they don't eat fast food?
Woo! Dang, that looks good. Thanks, Alex.
Yep, no problem.
So I've done a bunch of digging, and I'm gonna start setting the forms and pouring concrete for the support system of this ramp, and it's pretty complex, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to figure out how all of these planes are going to match up. Alright, so I just got my forms built and placed, and they're all staked in and level. So what I did here, if you can see, I've got a reference line over here which goes all the way from the end to the start in a straight line, and that's okay because we need to follow that plane. Even though it's straight, this is going to be curved. So what I did was stake at each point and find an apex that I'm always pointing these forms at, and then leveling over to that line all the way to the front edge of this form and leveling that over, so that at each of these stations we're running level straight across and right to the point at the inside of the curve. Hopefully that makes sense. You know, I'm trying to do this the simplest way possible. I'm sure you could do it a lot more precisely, but I have some fail safes here. For one, these forms I have on a slight tilt, so that top of that concrete surface is going to be 112 already, and then I've dropped these an 1.5 inches lower than the plane that I need, so I'm going to be screwing a pressure treated 2x4 on top of here, and that I can plane if I'm out at all at any station. I've got an 1.5 inches to work with that I can grind that thing down and make sure these all run flush. Alright, we've got some sweet magic going on here. This stairway turned out just as good as the other. Now this one has 7.5-inch risers, so it's a little bit different than the other stairway, and that's because the grade over here is quite a bit different than there. Those are 6-inch risers, so quite easier to build because the fascia pieces add up to 7, and so with a gap and all of that, turns out really nice. All right, here we go. I've got my first form set up and I'm ready to start laminating on with this West System resin epoxy. So this stuff is pre-portioned so that it's 3 squirts of each. 1, 2, 3. All right, let's mix that up. so I just got here and I finished removing all of the screws that were in this first form that I made. So what I'm going to focus on is getting the 3 extra joists that I need running all the way through here. And then there's a couple other little fill-ins I need to do. And it does look like I was using enough epoxy because this is all perfectly bonded together. Another thing I need to do before I move forward is go around with the planer and get this top of this perfectly flush and flat so that I can level everything over as I'm forming it. My plan of attack is to do this outer form and get that level with this so that I can fill in the middle and I know that everything's right. So what I'm going to do is put a couple spacer pieces across so that I get that 60 inches everywhere, and that will produce the same exact curve. Okay, so I've got my first piece fastened against here, and I've also got this. It's loose, but it's, you know, it's pretty sturdy. So I'm gonna level this across and then bring this up to my point and figure out exactly what we need to do to get the correct curve. So I'll be measuring across here at different points and making sure that inside measurement is 57. Okay, so I've got the outer plane of my outer joist set up, and that's just 1 ply. So we're ready to glue that up, but I wanted to just show this and show what I'm doing here to make sure that we're maintaining the same curve as the other side. It's important to get one perfectly set up, and then what I need to do, and the reason why I'm doing the outside first is so that I can get this level straight across. And it should always be level straight across because of our footing right on these planes, which point to the apex of the curve. And so if I bring this to all the different stations, you'll find that it's perfectly level, but only in this direction. So if you were to run your decking like this, it would give the sense that the ramp is like a little bit off. But all of the decking is going to run perpendicular to the angle of the curve. And so now I'm ready to glue this next one up. So I believe you can see what I've done here. I've removed those spacers that got my full width 60 inches. I removed those, and then in exactly the same spot I've come in and put in my block, which is pre-cut. So now I've got double the amount. When I go in and put in this next joist, I've got places to attach about every 2 feet, and it's just going to keep it right on that same cord. So we got one last detail that I put into the plan when I designed this deck. And so this ramp is going to come off at a really shallow angle here, and it's going to start bending back that way so that the entry to this ramp is a lot wider and it makes it a little bit safer at the highest point. So as you can see, I've been using my electric planer to plane down these pieces so they get a nice subtle curve. And I'm just gonna bend this all back in with epoxy. And that's how I'm gonna sort of fillet this little curve back into the existing curve. So here is the completion of this zone. I've got blocking, attaching everything to the existing deck, and then blocking running through. And this is the longest span that I'm doing with the laminated beams. And it's about 8 feet, and it's incredibly strong. Let me get up on here. So I've basically recreated 2x8s with all of this. So I'm comfortable with this zone, especially with how thick the plies get here where it attaches. So a little bit of math here. What I did was go ahead and measure the distance along the outside of my curve, which is the longer part, and it's 320 inches. And then I measured the length of the inside of my curve, which is 180. So there's quite a big difference. It's almost twice as long on the outside. So all that I'm trying to do is get a ratio here, which will give me a clue for how wide I'm gonna need to cut each of my boards. They're gonna taper from one end to the other. So we know on one end, it's gonna be 3.5 because that's the width of our decking. And so what is that width in this ratio? It's pretty simple math. It's just like some simple algebra. Just cross multiply these. 630 equals 320x, divide by 320. And it's like 1.97, it's about 2. And this is just for the rough idea. So I know that over the 60 inches of my width, I'm gonna be, tapering these from 3.5 to 2 inches. So I've begun laying decking on here. And so here's the process. I mean, essentially on both sides, you're gonna hang it over and cut it off later. I did run 3 rows as just full width pieces, just to make this transition from the deck a little bit more subtle. But again, it set me back so far on my angle that pretty quickly I had to start cutting these tapered pieces. Alright, so I've built a jig here to cut all of my tapered pieces. There is a notch on the bottom which rides on the table. It's kind of like a little sled. And then I've got that support back there, because once you get further out it starts getting heavy. So this is what I'm going to use to cut all of my tapered pieces. I need like 80 of them. So here's the first look. I just got it all sanded. All the screws are in. And I've yet to put the oil on it, so it's a little bit different color from the rest of the deck. But this just turned out so sweet. So here is the finished product. I'm super proud of this. I did forget my camera yesterday, so we didn't get the process of putting this fascia on, but this is a 1/2 by 12 PVC product by Fiberon. Let's just do a little walk through here. It's a little access panel here for the dryer vent. And this is the finish on the threshold.